All right. Good morning. Welcome to Snap Judgments, Coffee, and Football. This is Randy with Snap Judgments here for another episode. Uh, I think that we're going to be starting these at. I just kind of decided that I was going to, pick the halfway point between 8 and 9, and see how it goes. So here we are. Now, today we're talking Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl. This is not winners. This is not hypes. This is not Twitter stars. Okay, especially at Shrine Bowl this is the smaller names. These are the guys that we're talking about fits, culture fits, team fits. These are the players the Patriots are actually going to care about because of how they practice, how they compete, and how they carry themselves. Okay, I mean, if you sit here, well, look, we'll get into that in one moment. First of all, let's hit the quick coffee corner. This morning, I went ahead and made myself a little espresso using this skull crushing espresso, which is a good little mix. I have an espresso machine here at home. I like to use probably make a cup about once a day, give or take. Um, got it for Christmas. Starting to actually get good at it. Shout out to my girlfriend for being an excellent gift giver. Tasty stuff. Strong. Now, let me just apologize in advance because my two cats are going absolutely batshit crazy here. Just running around the house and doing whatever it is cats do. Uh, so, if you hear any sounds in the background, crashing or otherwise, that is what that's about. Apologies for the live stream yesterday, too. Apparently, the electric company in my area is swapping out meters. And so yeah, that's why my electric went down for a couple minutes yesterday. It went down in the area, I guess. Anyway, uh, so look, what the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl really are, this is where the draft starts. People say all the time within the draft community that the draft starts in Mobile. I think that's actually the Senior Bowl's like motto or, motto. And it's pretty accurate. I mean, this is when football head coaches, football staffs really start to pay attention to these draft prospects. Area scouts have been, looking at them, watching their tape, watching their games, talking to them all year. But right now is most of the teams are not playing anymore. There's 4 teams still playing, 28 that are not. And those 28 teams, this is the time that they're using to really start studying those prospects. The head coach, the GM, guys like that, you'll see a lot of those teams brass at some of these games. Owning animals is, these guys are very needy, very, very needy. I have the neediest German Shepherd on the face of the planet. He's terrified of my 2 kittens because they have all kinds of energy and he is not entirely sure what to do with all that. So he needs an emotional support dog of his own, I believe. Anyway, looking back at the 2025 rosters, we see that the Patriots picked up 6 guys out of these games. Okay, 2 as undrafted free agents, and 1 and sorry, um, 2 as undrafted free agents, Elijah Ponder and Efton Chisholm. We both saw at the Shrine Bowl last year, and they drafted 4. Andy Borregales, the kicker out of Miami, was at the Shrine Bowl last year. Craig Woodson, also the safety out of Cal, was also at the Shrine Bowl last year. And then over at the Senior Bowl, we had Kyle Williams, wide receiver out of Washington, and Joshua Farmer, the D tackle out of Florida State. I don't know why my animals, the second I turn on this camera, that this is all they want to do is come over here and do all. Anyway, we also saw the Shrine Bowl with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and Aronde Gadsden last year. Not Patriots picks, but impact picks in the league. And guys that made a difference in their rookie season. So these are definitely important games. There are games where you're going to see a lot of impact prospects and whatnot. Give me one. All right, and I'm back. Sorry again. Owning animals is a full-time job sometimes. So, uh, look, these two games this week is not just about the games. Really, for a lot of these players, it doesn't even go beyond the practices. I mean, last year, every year, really, at the Senior Bowl, we see guys show up, dominate the one-on-one drills, and then leave. They don't even play in the practice. They don't even play in the game. They don't play in the kind of walk through practice or any of that sort of stuff. They just show up for the one-on-one drills and then bounce. So these are weeks that you really need to pay attention as a draft fan and as a draft analyst, and be able to kind of have an idea of what you're looking for. Go out, check these players out, and see what you think of them. So if I let's say I'm going to go through some of these groups here, and give me one second. My spreadsheet here. Um, all right. So when it comes to the Patriots, let's start at the Senior Bowl. This is kind of the more bigger names and that sort of thing groups. There are a lot of players at the Senior Bowl that I would say are worth keeping an eye on for the Patriots. And what I wanted to do was just highlight a few of them. Um, and if I could, let's see. Yeah. So going down the list, there's a number of guys that I am very interested in taking a look at. Um, Number one being Hezekiah Massis. He's a cornerback out of Cal. Look, our Patriots staff seems to like the way that these Cal D backs are developed. They talked a lot about the system last year. Massis is 6'1, 185. He's a little bit on the thinner side for a cornerback, and he's not great in run defense or any of that. But what he is good at is covering. Okay, 13 passes deflected, 5 interceptions this year. He's definitely a guy that we could look to bring in, develop a little bit, and see what we could get out of him. Play him alongside his college teammate Craig Woodson, and see how the fit is. And really, there are a number of defensive backs in this class. I'm not going to go through in depth all of them, but this is a really impressive group, in my opinion. Looking down, we see Dalen Everett in Georgia. We saw him have a big interception in the playoffs there. D'Angelo Pons from Indiana. The closest comp, and where it's going to hit home for us, for me, is Marcus Jones with D'Angelo Pons. Okay, he is a itty bitty little guy. He's going to measure in about 5'8", 170. Tiny little guy, impact player. Okay, he's a guy. He doesn't even want to just stay in the slot, but he's going to have to because he's tiny. But he doesn't want to. He's going to want to get out on the boundary. He's going to want to guard your best receiver. He is. We saw him in the championship game. They're shut down a bigger receiver throughout the game versus Miami. So, speaking of Miami, we've got Keontae Scott, who had a big rising throughout the playoff process. A lot of mock drafters and a lot of the draft communities really getting to know his name. Chris Johnson from San Diego State's considered a sleeper by a lot of people. Those guys that play on the West Coast, like San Diego State and stuff, they often the East Coast folks, we don't get the benefit of seeing them, right? A lot of East Coast folks are in bed by the time they're playing. So, these guys kind of tend to sneak up on the East Coast guys right about this time of year. But Chris Johnson from San Diego State, he's going to be a name that's probably going to go early on day 2 this year, possibly even late round 1. Jalen Kilgore is a guy that everybody's heard a lot about, versatile defensive back out of South Carolina. At 6'1", 211, he's, heftier. He's listed as cornerback on the Senior Bowl roster, but most people think of him as a safety or even just a defensive back, kind of a, versatile tool, multi-use weapon in the defense, if you will. Colton Hood got a little bit of love. He's out of Tennessee, got a little bit of love early in the process. We had folks that were projecting him to the first round. I haven't seen that in a while, but still probably a solid day two pick. Malik Muhammad from Texas, the Senior Bowl director, who I am drawing a blank on his name, Drew Fabianish, was on Todd McShay just this morning, actually talking about Malik Muhammad. He identified him as, one of the players. It was the first name out of his mouth, but one of the players that could jump up into round one sort of contention. So, um, the he's another one, though, 6 foot 178, real thin, needs to put on some weight, some useful weight, and not have it affect his speed. Um, Willie the third out of Texas A&M, Takario Davis, and his teammate Ephesians Prysock, both 6'4" corners. Um, don't mind tackling, decent in the run game. Probably a little bit of questions about coverage and speed and so forth. But those are the sort of guys that if I'm the Patriots, I'm keeping an eye on because I need guys that can cover the tight end. I need guys that can cover the big slot receivers. Okay. We all saw that Atlanta Falcons game. Drake London at 6'4" lined up in the slot against Marcus Jones. It's just not going to work out for the little guy. It really isn't. I love Marcus Jones. Don't get me wrong, but he's still 5'8". He's still 8 inches shorter than a guy like Drake London, 9 inches shorter than 6'5" tight end like a Rondé Gadsden or something. And you get those matchups, and they are instant mismatches in favor of the offense. So you take a guy like Takario Davis, take a guy like Ephesians Prysock, and line him up in those spots instead. That would be my plan. Moving right along, we've got the defensive line class here in the Senior Bowl. A couple guys that might interest us here that I have highlighted. Tim Keenan, the third out of Alabama. I have seen a range of draft grades and projections on Tim Keenan, the third. Some people love him. I know a guy who has him top 50. And then there are other people that I know that have him as an undrafted free agent. So, he's 6'2", he's 325. That Alabama team was somewhat disappointing at times, and I know that he had some injuries throughout the year. I've still got to do kind of a deep dive into some of these guys, but he's a player that I'll be keeping my eye on here in Mobile while he's in Mobile. Caleb Banks from Florida. This is a guy, he played about 14 snaps this year, okay? Prior to the season, I had Caleb Banks as projected as potentially a top 10 pick in this class. I really thought that there was a good chance that he was going to be able to outperform Peter Woods and become the top defensive tackle in this class. Unfortunately, he suffered injuries, and he just wasn't able to play very much. So he played something like 14 snaps this year. They were good. They were fine. Like there was no complaints about it, but this is a very, very small sample size. And last year when you saw his tape, look, this guy is a physical monster. Okay. He's listed as 6'5" and 6'8", I think it is. Nearly 6'6", 330 pounds. He is incredibly strong. He's got great get off. I saw one play on his tape from 2024 where he just pancaked two Tennessee offensive linemen. There are few guys in the world with those kind of physical gifts. He just isn't the best football player sometimes. Somebody's got to get in there and teach him how to pair those physical skills with some football IQ and, develop some football IQ. There are times that you see him just get into the backfield immediately, right? And incredibly fast, right through the offensive line, but he totally misses the running back. His missed tackle rate, if I remember correctly, is fairly high. Once I start getting into episodes where I kind of narrow down on, say, 3 to 5 prospects, I'll get a lot deeper into these guys individually. But Yeah, right now that's what we've got on Caleb Banks. Dominique Orange, big citrus out of Iowa State, 6'4", 326. This is another guy you'll probably see go on day two. He'll be over at the Senior Bowl. And rounding out that group of guys that I'm interested in that are these are kind of the bigger names of the group, but they're all probably day two prospects. Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. We saw him really make an impact in the playoff games. He's a great run defending defensive lineman. I would think of him when it comes to the Patriots as comparing well in terms of our scheme with like a maybe like a Kyrie's Tonga or something. He's not a guy that's really gonna get great penetration in the middle of the pocket and collapse that pocket. But he is a guy that's going to be able to hold down the line and stop running backs from just doing what they want between the tackles. We saw that be an issue when Kyrie's Tonga was off the field and Milton Williams was injured. You will not see that be an issue if Lee Hunter is there. Moving down the line, we've got a number of edge prospects that I think the Patriots should have their eye on. Um, just headed right down this list. TJ Parker out of Clemson. He's a little big for our scheme at 6'3, 265. You don't see the Patriots really having a lot of guys over like 250. Elijah Ponder's the one that comes to mind. I know he was 261, but generally our edge rushers are going to be right about the 245 range. So TJ Parker's a little bit big for us, but still, you get him playing on that left side opposite Harold Landry. And, he could probably do a decent job setting the edge. Vincent Anthony Jr., he's going to be a late day three prospect. It measures in at 6'6", 250. He's out of Duke. He really popped onto my radar during the game against Illinois, where he registered 3 sacks over J.C. Davis, who's another NFL draft prospect this year. That's good stuff, actually. You got to really, the trick is trying to steam that milk right. It's a tricky process. You got to make sure you're doing it enough, but not too much. You don't want to burn it. You want to bubble it. You want to get it frothy is the word for it. It's a milk frother. Sorry, moving along. Max Llewellyn out of Iowa is a pass rusher, 6'5", 258. Again, a little on the bigger side, but you trim some of these guys down and they fit right into what we're looking for. Derek Moore out of Michigan, 6'3", 256. R. Mason Thomas, Oklahoma, 6'2", 249. Cassius Howell out of Texas A&M, 6'4", 255. Now, quick note on that, Cassius Howell is actually not going to be at the Senior Bowl, but he was on the Senior Bowl roster, so I listed him. He is dealing with an injury and not going to be able to appear. A lot of people are projecting that maybe he doesn't feel like he'll do well in the one-on-one drills, just given his build and so forth. And the problem with that is he's the alligator arms problem, right? Same as Will Campbell on the other side of things. He's just got those little short itty bitty arms. Some people have said they're going to come in at like less than 31 inches, which is a concerning number. It's similar to the Ruben Bain conversation this year. R. Mason Thomas, Derek Moore, Cassius Howell, David Bailey. These guys are, excuse me. These guys, good pass rushers, kind of project to like a DPR role in this league, mostly useless against the rush. And from a Patriots perspective, that's not as big a problem as it is with some of these teams. This particular scheme, they really want their defensive line to just kind of pin their ears back and chase after the quarterback. So not as big a problem in our scheme as it would be in some, but still, pushes them into kind of a DPR role. David Bailey, Romello Height, other names that you'll see that are in the edge group at the Senior Bowl worth mentioning. Moving right along the inside offensive line, Jake Slaughter from Florida is a favorite of many people in this draft process. He's going to be a day 2 pick. He'll play center. He'll play guard in the league. He could potentially just be kind of like a versatile backup for the interior offensive line on some team. And he may, in fact, start. Keelan Rutledge out of Georgia Tech is a guy who's had my attention. Real good run blocker. We have not seen a lot in the pass blocking game because of the way that Georgia Tech played this year, behind Haynes King at quarterback. But, 6'4", 320. The guy's got the size. He's got the mass. He's got the girth to play the guard position in the NFL. So I would be interested in seeing what he has here at the Senior Bowl. Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon is another guy who's going to be at the Senior Bowl. He is right at the top of my list for draft guard prospects. I really like him. I think he's got the versatility to get moved from from the left side to the right side. I don't think he's going to do any like snapping of the ball, so he doesn't really have any center versatility. But somebody who can solidify either the left or right side, interior side of your line, is a valuable piece to me, and I think he's certainly worth the first round pick for the Patriots. Moving right along, well, I actually skipped this group and go to the offensive tackle group because they're about very similar to the interior offensive line. Jude Bowery and Logan Taylor out of Boston College are both going to be there. 6'5" and 6'6.5", respectively, both weighing about the same, just under 310. Austin Barber from Florida, 6'6", 322. J.C. Davis out of Illinois, I mentioned him earlier. And a guy that everybody's excited about, Jennings Dunker out of Iowa, 6'5", 316. If you listen to Pro Football Focus at all, you will recognize that name because Trevor has been on him since the beginning of the season. He had him mocked top 10 at points in time. He's more likely to be a round 2 pick, but definitely kind of the guy that you would expect out of an Iowa lineman. Okay, the mullet, the big mustache, just country tough. Jennings Dunker is a guy that folks are going to love. It's going to kind of be the same feel as like a Gray Zabel, right? Like the old country boy, etc. Not quite the same skill set. Gray Zabel was quite a bit more versatile. And, you saw him at center. You saw him at both guard spots. You saw him at tackle spots last year. I mean, he really played all over the place. He was dominant. And earned himself first round selection. I don't see the same sort of draft stock for Jennings Dunker or draft projection really, but he's a very interesting prospect. And I think some team's going to draft him for the right side of their line, whether it be guard or tackle. A lot of people are projecting him to guard now. But I think he's got the size to play tackle. And the question is going to be in the pass protection game. Can he get out there and block those littler pass rushers and so forth? And we see a pair of guys out of Oregon, Alex Harkey and Isaiah World. Isaiah World is a interesting prospect to me. He came to Oregon out of UNLV. Before that, I thought he was at UNR, but he was listed at 6'8", 309, which is absurdly tall. And it's the sort of size of some prospects that I get worried about when you're tall and kind of thin, because you just kind of, it's not good for leverage. But also, a little bit old news, since the summer, there have been a lot of rumors flying around that maybe he actually measures closer to like 6'5". So, more of a traditional size for an offensive tackle, not one of these ridiculously oversized guys. But definitely an interesting prospect. He had a little bit of a down year in Oregon. Is a little bit of a disappointment to a lot of folks. And he'll be worth keeping an eye on. I expect him to probably go in the second round this year. Moving right along, we got Drew Shelton out of Penn State, 6'5", 308. Left tackle, probably again a day 2 pick. Demetrius Crownover out of Texas A&M, and also his teammate Trey Zune III. Crownover playing on the right, Trey Zune playing on the left. And that pretty much wraps up the guys that I would be looking at in the offensive tackle class. I'm going to head back to this linebacker group because this linebacker group's pretty solid. Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech is probably the leading linebacker, a guy that I would be happy to look at for the Patriots on day 2, probably more like a round 3 pick. And then Kyle Lewis out of Pittsburgh. He is a guy who's going to play I mean, he's going to be a versatile guy. The question with Kyle Lewis and players like him is, are you too versatile? Kind of, right? Like, you'll sometimes see the label tweener thrown around, and occasionally it's as a compliment, and then other times it's as a like he doesn't have a position bad thing, right? So Kyle Lewis, we're gonna kind of figure that out. I think back to someone like an Isaiah Simmons a few years back, where you weren't quite sure where to play him. It could be linebacker, it could be safety. And for Patriots here, look at a guy like Marte Mapu, who moved from safety to linebacker last year. And we've had a hard time figuring out exactly where to use him, exactly how to use him. Um, so that's an interesting prospect to watch through this process here in Mobile. And another linebacker that I'll be looking at is Deontay Lawson out of Alabama, 6'2", 230. He's a guy that would fit our scheme well, and I think he reads the quarterback's eyes well. I think he makes plays on the ball very well. I'm interested to see how he'll fit into that group, how he'll, from a linebacker group, what I want to see is like leadership on the field, off the field. I want to see those guys the green dot guy, right? Um, Moving along, there's a quarterback group that interests some folks. I'm not particularly interested in it, given the fact we have Drake May, Joshua Dobbs being the backup. I don't see him going anywhere in the immediate future. One guy I am interested in, however, in that group is someone who I would consider a late round prospect. I'd look at grabbing him up with one of our 4 6th round picks, and that's Taylon Green out of Arkansas. This is a top dual threat quarterback. He's 6'6", 225. He's a little thin, but man, he can run. He can throw the ball. He has got skills, and he needs a little bit of polish. And I think that you take a guy like that and bring him into the system, set him up on the scout team. Number one, he's going to do a great job as a scout team, like facsimile of some of these other big mobile quarterbacks, the Josh Allens of the world, that sort of thing. But number two, I think that he's a guy who legitimately has the tools that once you teach him the best way to quarterback, to get him under McDaniels, under Grant, under Riley Larkin, under all these guys that we have set up to teach our quarterbacks here in New England. You get him there for years, and he's the type of guy that maybe you turn him from a 6th round pick this year into a second or third through trade value next year. Um, I think he's a very that on here in mobile. And look, I'm a subscriber to the theory that you should be drafting a quarterback, I don't know, once every 2 or 3 seasons. Okay. Doesn't matter if you have a guy or if you don't, you want to develop those guys. You want to have a good backup ready to go. And you also always have the potential of having a guy that, say, like your starter goes down for 3 games, 4 games, whatever it is. Your backup comes in, he absolutely kills it, and then all of a sudden now you have other teams looking for your backup and willing to trade you a second, third round pick. Now that's something that happened a lot more often 15 to 20 years ago, but I think that it's still a reason. It's still a good investment of a late day 3 pick into someone that could really impact your team. Um, Moving right along throughout the offense, the running back group has a couple of names that I'll be keeping an eye on. Number one being Jonah Coleman out of Washington, little bowling ball type of guys, 5'8", 5'9", 230 pounds. Um, Hard to bring down, good in pass protection. A good guy that I could see us putting on the opposing Travion Henderson, right? Because you kind of want that smash and dash running back committee, if you will. And Jonah Coleman would be a good smash option to Travion Henderson's dash. Katron Allen's another guy similar to that mold, 5'11", 217, a little bit less of the bowling ball uh, type of build. You don't have the Maurice Jones-Drew build like with Jonah Coleman. You've got a little bit of a taller, more stretched out, but still heavier back. He's been very productive in college. And I really like him. A lot of people like his teammate Nicholas Singleton over him, both from Penn State. Singleton was definitely the more highly rated prospect coming into college and throughout his college career. But I'll tell you, it was a red flag to me this year when Penn State's offense really fell off. I mean, their quarterback got injured. James Franklin got fired. The place was a disaster this year. Okay. But Katron Allen, he just kept on producing. Okay. 6.2 yards per carry, 15 touchdowns, 210 attempts. Now Nick Singleton, on the other hand, 4.5 yards per carry, um, and 13 touchdowns on 123 attempts. All right, those were down from his year before, where he was 6.4 yards per carry. Okay, 41 receptions in 2024, down to 24 in 2025. Look, he's got talent, but kind of what I'm getting at is when your team's falling apart, do you want one of your best, most impactful players also quitting, or do you want them trying to carry that team? Myself, I want them trying to carry that team. So I have a higher grade on Katron Allen, his teammate, than I do on Nicholas Singleton because of that one reason. Um, we'll stick on the offensive side of the ball and take a look at this tight end group, which is a very strong group here, led by Michael Trigg out of Baylor. You've probably seen some highlight catches of him on YouTube or ESPN or elsewhere. This is a guy who has just absolutely massive 10 plus inch hands. They stand out like catcher's mitts on TV, and he catches just about everything coming at him. You've also got Marlon Klein. I believe he's a German player, and he's coming out of Michigan. He's he played college football for Michigan Wolverines, won a championship. He was part of that championship team in 2023. Born in Germany, he grew up playing soccer and basketball. He really is fairly new um, to football overall, but 6'6", 247, incredibly athletic. He's going to be an interesting prospect to a lot of the guys at the Senior Bowl here. Then you've got guys like Tanner Koziol, Josh Cuevas, um, John Michael Gillenborg, Sam Roush, Justin Jolly out of North Carolina State. There's a number of names in there that people are going to be interested in taking a look at. One of the stronger groups in this year's draft is the wide receiver class, and I've highlighted a number of names that we're going to be keeping an eye on here as well. Number one, Jeremy Bernard, Alabama wide receiver. He was highly productive this year. Just a guy who seemed like he was always getting open, always there when the quarterback needed him. And he really stepped up when some of his more highly rated teammates were nowhere to be found this year. So he's an interesting prospect to me. Josh Cameron was lead receiver at Baylor, one of Sawyer Robertson's favorite targets this year. Highly talented players, 6'1", 220. Good build to him, decent height. I like him as a player. Ted Hurst at Georgia State is a guy that I've been hearing a lot about recently from friends of mine in the draft circles. This guy, 6'3", 185, is a little bit on the thin side. Great burst and get off the line of scrimmage. Good contested catch guy. He's a guy that I think is going to make a name for himself this week at the Senior Bowl. Again, he's a little bit on the thinner side, though, 6'3", 185. If I'm an NFL team, I'm interested in him, but I need to bulk him up 10, maybe 15 pounds. Elijah Surratt out of Indiana, you probably saw him in the championship game throughout this playoff run. He's like 7'11", okay? He's always open. He's reliable, great hands, good production throughout all his years in college, no matter who his quarterback was. He's a very legit prospect. He's going to go sometime in round two. And then two more guys to highlight here in the wide receiver group. Malachi Fields out of Notre Dame. I've talked extensively about him. I'm very interested in him as a prospect. 6'4", 220, great run blocker, possession receiver, red zone target. He is a guy that we should definitely be keeping an eye on. And then Jacoby Lane out of USC, another 6'4", a little bit thinner though, 195, but contested catch, highlight reel target that we should be keeping an eye on as Patriots fans when we're looking at filling that X receiver role, okay, the sacrificial X, if you will. And then there are four more defensive prospects here in the safety group. This is one of the better groups in the class again. Genesis Smith out of Arizona, Zakee Wheatley out of Penn State, Kamari Ramsey, USC, and Emmanuel McNeil Warren out of Toledo is kind of the Toledo guy this year. Toledo's been turning out really good defensive backs, and they often get their first exposure to the NFL football world this week. So that's the list of the guys at the Senior Bowl that I'll be keeping an eye on, and a little bit of extra about a couple of them. Um, I'm going to take a quick break here before I get into the Shrine Bowl roster. All right, and we're back. Sorry about that break. Just a quick stretch of my leg between segments here. Um, I'm headed over to the Shrine Bowl. Now, at the Shrine Bowl, there are three major position groups that I'm very interested in. Um, just bear with me one second. All right. Um, Sorry, I'm still a little bit of an old school guy, paper and pen notes. So at the Shrine Bowl, I've got a number of prospects that I'm interested in, and then three major groups. Okay. So here are the guys. Edge, Malachi Lawrence out of UCF. This is a guy that I could see being taken with the first round pick by the Patriots. Okay, he is an incredibly talented edge rusher, 6'5, 250, 255, explosive, strong, fast, 35 and a half inch arms. This is the guy you would make in Madden to be an edge rusher for these Patriots. Um, he has all the physical tools. He needs coaching. I think Mike Smith, our edge rushing and linebacker, outside linebacker coach, would be a great guy to coach this guy up. I think he would really like him. Um, I could definitely see him as being part of our scheme. One of the major drawbacks with him is, again, not a lot in run defense. But again, we simply don't ask that from our edge defenders. So that's not a problem. Um, Patrick Payton, LSU edge defender. Now he's a little bit on the smaller side. He's like 6'2", 220. He's going to be another one of those tweener guys that, we'll see if there's a role in the NFL for him. And then moving right along, defensive tackle Daryl Jackson Jr. out of Florida State. He's going to be one of the bigger, more physical prospects at the Shrine Bowl. I expect him to kind of dominate the trench drills and so forth, to be honest. But I think he's going to be a real good matchup there. And then running back Damon Claiborne, running back out of Wake Forest. He's highly talented. I know analysts that have him as the second rated running back, third rated running back in the class. The important thing with him is he's also going to be able to contribute on special teams, which is a big thing. When you're a rookie and you're trying to get snaps, you're trying to get on the field, your ability to contribute in all three phases of the game, or at least in two, I guess, most of them, is incredibly important. And then safety Jalen Husky. Jalen Husky is a guy that got on my radar earlier in the process. Mel Kiper talked about him. He plays in Mel's backyard at Maryland. Um, and also a number of guys in the Draft Professor Network really are big fans of Jalen Husky. So he's a guy I'll be keeping my eye on at the Shrine Bowl practices and in the game. A little bit of a do whatever or do it all type of safety, probably a day two pick. And then getting into the position groups themselves that I'll be keeping an eye on. This is a good linebacker group for us to keep an eye on. Um, just a couple of the names in the group. Lander Barton out of Utah. He's a 6'5", 250 coverage type linebacker. Perfect for covering those tight ends, the big slots that I was talking about earlier. Wesley Besaint out of Miami, 4-year starter down there. 6'1", 230. He's got the size to be a linebacker. He's got the experience in a big time system, and kind of one of those green dot type of guys that just runs the defense. Eric Gentry out of USC, another guy, 6'5", 220. Interesting long frame. Played at Arizona as well. Going to be another coverage type of guy. Jake Golday out of Cincinnati was a guy who picked up steam later in the mock draft process. It's cooled off a bit now, but if he goes to the Shrine Bowl and dominates, it'd be hard for people to not be talking him up. And then you've got Harold Perkins Jr. out of LSU and Torian York out of Texas A&M. Both interesting prospects, both a bit on the smaller side, very different prospects. Harold Perkins uh, Jr. Oh, sorry, actually, Harold Perkins. Let me pull up his weight. Harold Perkins, 6'1", 222. Yeah, so a little bit on the smaller side, but great speed, great athleticism. He's been dominant in college football in the SEC at one of the highest levels. So it's real hard to question whether or not he'd be a valuable pick. And then that kind of rounds out the linebacker group. Moving right along, there are a number of wide receivers at the Shrine Bowl that I think are worth keeping an eye on. Skylar Bell out of UConn is a guy who's got a lot of interest. He's another guy. He's a little bit on the thinner side. He's like 6'1", 185 type of guy. People compare him to like a Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith out of Philadelphia. Who could be like a number 2 type receiver at his ceiling, I think. Eric Rivers is a guy who I liked a lot early in the process. You saw his tape out of FIU last year, which is the lower level, and he was absolutely ridiculously athletic. Speed, quickness, missed tackles forced. He set a number of records there while he was there. Now, then he transferred over to Georgia Tech, try and get up into a higher level of competition. And unfortunately, he just didn't pick the greatest offense or the greatest offense for a wide receiver, right? Haynes King, the quarterback over there, wasn't exactly known for his arm. He's known for his legs. So Eric Rivers' stock didn't quite take off as much as I think maybe it could have. But he's still a very interesting prospect to keep an eye on. He's a guy I think he could help in the punt and kick return game if we needed. And, a guy that would be probably a day 3 option, and probably start out deep on the bench in the wide receiver room, but still an interesting set of skills. And then the last 3 names that I would mention there in that group is Chase Roberts out of BYU, a little bit of a bigger prospect, 6'4", hasn't had as much kind of like airtime as some of these prospects, but definitely going to be an interesting guy to keep an eye on in the Shrine Bowl. Then you got J. Michael Sturdivant out of Florida, 6'3", all the physical tools that you need. Not a lot of production this year. Had a little bit of a down year. He's going to be looking to prove something at the Shrine Bowl. And then lastly, Noah Thomas at Georgia. 6'5", red zone possession type target. Very interesting prospect to me. The next group that I would highlight, and this is the last group we're going to talk about, is the interior offensive line here. I think this has got a number of future NFL players on it, guys who are probably going to be picked somewhere in the day 3 range. That's where I'm going to be looking at them, rounds 4, 5, 6, that type of range. Just run through a couple of the names here. DJ Campbell out of Texas, Pat Coogan, left guard out of Indiana, Inez Cooper, right guard out of Miami, Micah Morris out of Georgia, Brian Parker Jr. the second out of Duke, Sometimes I see him listed as junior, sometimes I see him listed as a second. So I'll have to get some clarification there. Armaj Reed Adams out of Texas A&M. And lastly, Jaden Roberts out of Alabama, who's actually my favorite in the group. I think comps reasonably well. The Tyler Booker from last year, who was a first round pick, but Jaden Roberts run blocks a little better. Um, Other people not in love with him. Definitely, again, probably a first half of day three type of pick. You're talking about rounds 4 or 5. If you can grab him in round 6, that'd be great value. Um, so look, we just covered probably about 50, 60 names that are going to be at the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl this year. There are a number of guys to look out for. You've got most of the names that we're going to need to look out for as Patriots fans, guys that we could potentially see in a Patriots uniform next year. Um, Look, let me know in the comments. Who do you think I missed? Who do you think I should have gotten a little deeper into? Who would you like to see a deeper dive into in future episodes? Um, these events, they're not just important because of the drills, they're not just important because of the practices themselves and how players play on the field. They're important because of how players carry themselves in the locker room, how players interact with other all-star type players, right? Uh, you kind of been the big dog on your team for a long time, and then you walk into the Senior Bowl, and everybody else was also the big dog on their team, right? And that's the first time you're really going to have that experience, but it's not the last because when you walk into an NFL locker room, it's going to be like that too. And so seeing how you handle yourself in a setting like that, seeing how you handle yourself with a group like that is very, very important. Um, I think that that the importance of these types of all-star games, it really can't be overstated. And I think for me, the guys who skip these games, it's a little bit of a red flag. Not quite as much of a red flag as if they like skip their own bowl game. At that point in time, you're kind of tapping out on your team, and I'm a little bit all set with you. But skipping these games is a little bit of a I just want a guy who wants to take every opportunity he has to dominate the competition and then go out and do that. Right. So that's what interests me. Look, at the end of the day, you're going to have a year of tape on most, if not all, of these guys. I mean, if with the exception of guys like Caleb Banks, for instance, or Jermod McCoy, who was not playing in one of these games and really should be because he missed the entire year, and he should probably show people that he is back to healthy. Um, but with the exception of guys like that, you have a full year of tape on these guys, and at the end of the day, that needs to speak louder than anything else, right? What these events do is they teach you about how guys interact with other players of their caliber, and they also are a bit of a confirmation. Okay, you confirm what you've seen on tape, or you deny what you've seen on tape and say, "Oh, okay, that guy was misused." You know, I think another interesting aspect of these games is that in some ways, some of these players you want to measure and you want to find out what they're all about. The other players are measuring sticks by which you'll measure the first group, right? So, I mean, I'm talking about a guy like Trey Lance. Okay. Trey Lance out of North Dakota State just didn't face a high level of competition this year. It's really hard to know exactly what to think of him. And then all of a sudden, you're going to get him in there against, Chris Johnson out of San Diego State. You're going to get him in there against, Takario Davis, Ephesians Price, all these cornerbacks and defensive backs that do have experience with, 5-star uber athletic wide receivers. And we're going to see how guys like Bryce Lance or Chase Roberts perform in those scenarios, right? So it tells us a lot about that. And then you take it's really a stage for the small school guys to kind of vault themselves into day one and day two consideration. Um, and the bigger school guys to prove themselves as, who they are. So, um, that's basically that's the episode there. Um, we not the smoothest end. My apologies. Look, we're gonna work on these things. Okay, this is episode 3. Um, I've got comfort levels to be gained while on this camera and on this microphone. Um, Look, tomorrow we'll talk a little bit more in detail about some of these prospects that I really, really like. Okay. Some of the prospects that I think would really fit the Patriots system. We'll get a little deeper into a handful of them, maybe 5 or 10 guys that we'll talk about, 3 to 5 minutes each, something in that neighborhood. And give you guys some real answers as to who they are, what kind of player they are, and why we might be interested in them as Patriots fans, why we might be seeing them in a Patriots jersey next year. And if we do, what could we potentially expect? Um, so that's it. That's Snap Judgments. That's the episode for today. We'll be back tomorrow morning. We're going to be starting these at 8:30 right now. I just thought I would split the difference. I said 8 initially, showed up at 9, and you know what? We're going to meet in the middle. We're going to call it 8:30 every day. We're going to run for about an hour right now, and we're going to talk again games, roster analysis, draft, etc. We've got a big game coming up this weekend. I will be ready to make my pick for that on Thursday or Friday's episode. I can tell you right now, I'm leaning New England. So again, hop in the comments. Let me know if there's somebody at the Senior Bowl or at the Shrine Bowl that you think I forgot, or somebody I mentioned that you're interested in hearing more about, or you think would be a great fit for the Patriots system, team, and the way that we play football. In the meanwhile, between now and next episode, have a great day, guys. This is Randy from Snap Judgments signing off. Have a good one.